Hello, Ram55 here, coming at you with another video. Thanks for tuning in. The last few videos I've posted have been some operational sessions on the Tidewater Railroad, which is on Trainz 2019, an excellent route that's been made by JR or Jointed Rail. Tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to give you a tour of that route so you can get a better feel for the industries that are there. Now here's the map as it was originally made by Jointed Rail. It's a north-south running route. It's a short line. To the south is Tidewater. To the north is River Point. South I have serviced by CSX and Norfolk Southern, and to the north it's serviced by Canadian National. And you can see I've modified it a little bit. On each of the corners there's some things sticking out there. I've put in some staging tracks that are off scene. You really don't see them when you're running the layout. But that's where I have my trains that are staged to come on the route. So this is a closer view of Tidewater. To the right is to the east, and to the left is to the west. Here's a Google Earth view of Tidewater. All the industries are located in the port area to the upper right of that photograph. We'll get into more details on those in a little bit. Trains entering from the western staging area will see this view of Tidewater. And you can see that there's a north and a south yard with some common industries in the middle, basically the engine repair facilities and repair in place tracks and things of that nature. Coming from the east, this is basically the view they'll see. You can see where at the bottom right there it branches off, and CSX goes to the north to serve the northern yard, and Norfolk Southern goes to the south. Now here's a diesel storage facility that I modified very slightly. I put that unloading facility, that rack, just to give me the ability to service more cars. This is the way it originally looked on the layout. So I can put a couple cars in there and service them all at the same time, before and after. Now this is a section of the center part between the north and south yards for maintenance of way vehicles. You can see a crane to the right. There's a gondola and a flat car that is carrying supplies that would be used to repair track. Also in the middle is this engine repair facility that's used by the Tidewater Railroad. This side, which is the eastern side of that building, will be used primarily by switchers servicing the south yard. Just because of the way the track's laid out, they have access to that yard. Also to the foreground on the right is where all the engines will be refueled. You can see a gasoline truck parked on the right there, so they'll bring their engines over to refuel them. You can see one of the switchers down there on the southern yard. On the eastern end of that building is where all the road vehicles and all the switchers for the northern yard are kept. Also there's a covered shed there that is where the repair and track, repair in place facilities are. So those last two tracks, or the nearest two tracks, are for repair of vehicles. And here's a view of that engine maintenance facility looking from the west. Now departing to the west, I've modified the track quite a bit here. You can see the far right track just kind of cuts around, and I basically made that into a yard track, whereas before it would just continue on and completely bypass the track. It was completely useless to me, so I just made it a yard track. And you can see that the two yards merge as they go further west. Now there's a 3-track layout. In the original layout that was 3 tracks leading to nowhere basically. And I said, you know, this is going to really be a single track operation. So I made the 2 opposite tracks, the ones on the outside, stub tracks to be used as yard leads. And then beyond that is this right here that I've added a couple boards of terrain. They're staging yards, and they're quite long, so I can get some pretty long trains there. Here's an overview of the port of Tidewater, and we'll get into details, but I've made a fair number of modifications to this area. One of the first areas you come to is this facility right here that I've modified a little bit. It's a steel processing area. I've added an overhead crane. This is what it looked like before the modifications. There's also a platform there that you can unload flat cars and box cars as well. But I figure if you're going to be taking big old steel coils out of there, you're going to need an overhead crane to lift them and put them on trucks and take them into the building to do whatever they do with them. The next facility down the road is this scrap iron, and this has been completely unmodified. This is the way it came stock. So they've got some front loaders there that will be scooping up scrap iron, loading them into gondolas. There's also a magnetic crane underneath that shed for doing the same. Another view of the scrap iron facility. If you go to the right when you first come into Tidewater, the first industry you come to is this right here. It's a propane storage facility. They can only handle one car, so having one platform for unloading is fine. That's no big deal. This is the way the food processing area looked stock out of the box. Pretty unremarkable. I just added a few things to spicing it up a little bit. There's several docks there where they'll bring in some packaging material and some food products and then ship them out in box cars. But I've added a couple ships to make it more interesting. And again, I haven't really figured out how to incorporate those cranes into the layout and what they're going to do, because there's no track that really services them. There's a track for the food processing area and another one that goes down further to the wharf, but nothing that will service these cargo ships coming in with those cranes. And this is the wharf area. Again, I just spiced it up with a couple ships, taking general goods, flat cars and box cars worth of stuff, loading them up on these ships for transport up and down the river. This area is pretty much unmodified from the original stock version. Now this is the original coal loading facility, and I expanded this quite a bit. It just wasn't big enough to handle the amount of coal I would like to be bringing in. Those that coal barge there has hooks on the end of those cranes, totally useless for loading and unloading coal. So basically I've added a dump track so that the hopper cars will be able to quickly unload their product, and it gets put through conveyor belts up into those piles. I've added different kinds of cranes that will load the coal from those piles into this bulk carrier here. I've extended the amount of dock space there, pulled that out so this ship would fit in, and just expanded that area. Put in some brick walls to retain the coal, and here's an overview of the Tidewater area. So from Tidewater, if you were doing a local run, you'd be heading north. The first facility we would come to is this oil storage facility. They take crude oil and only slightly modify this a little bit. It's a fairly large industry. They've got some storage tanks for loaded and full tank cars, but I put in some more platforms there so they can service more than one tank car at a time. Here's another large facility. This is Tidewater grain, large storage track. This is one of the major industries on the route. This is where the farmers will bring their trucks in and empty their grain, go through the silos up into those, go through the conveyor belts up into those silos. And on the other side is where the grain will get loaded up into the hopper cars. Just down the road from that, in fact, they share a lead track, is this co-op grain facility. So it's got pretty small capability. It only take a couple cars at a time. It's got a runaround track so you can pull them in one way and run around and grab them from the other direction. Grain is, like I have said before in my other videos, the main business here on the Tidewater route. Going further north, we come to this facility, which is the terminal grain facility, and I've modified this one a little bit. Basically, I swapped that far building around so it's facing the other direction. It's on the other side of the track. This is the way it was originally, but where the cars were loaded out of that silo, you could only load one car at a time. So I swapped it around so you can actually feed cars through and fill up multiple cars just pushing them back. And then from there we go further up north to River Point. If you're coming from Tidewater or the west staging yard, this is what you would be seeing. Again, the yard is divided with a little gap in between a north and a south section. And this is what the view would look like coming from the east staging track. First little facility we come to has been modified a little bit. This is a gasoline storage facility. I just again put some unloading facilities there so that you can service more than one car at a time. This is what it looked like originally. It only had one platform for unloading those tank cars, and I just added some more walkways there to unload multiple cars. Next is one of the major industries up to the north there at River Point, and that's the small intermodal yard. This is again unmodified. This is all stock. The way I envision things happening, the cars will be brought in and the well cars will be unloaded. This engine here will then service the empties and put them on that track storage yard there in the foreground. And when there's enough of a load, he'll bring them back over to the main yard and they'll be hooked up to trains and taken off the route. This is a facility that I have just generated. It was a building, had a track in there, but it was completely fenced off. It was completely covered with other products laying around this yard. And I said, you know, that would be a great facility to actually incorporate into the layout. And I have to take that fence out there. So I straightened the track out, put an overhead crane in, and you can see that there's a bunch of pipes stacked up. They'll be producing pipe. So they'll be taking in some steel products and producing pipe, putting them on flat cars, gondolas, whatever. This is another facility that's been changed quite a bit. This is how it was originally in the stock version. It had one unloading ramp there and nothing else. Well, I've turned it into a farmer's showroom, basically. This is where they come to buy their stuff. They got harvesters there. They've got John Deere tractors. They've got another platform for unloading flat cars. So it justifies the amount of tracks they have there and the amount of business they're doing, since this is basically a farming community. This was what I call the no-name industry. I didn't know exactly what to make of it. I still don't know what they make, but you can see that big old vent or pipe that goes from one building to the other. That just blocks the traffic. It just didn't make sense to me. So basically what I did is I took that pipe out, I moved the building over a little bit and put an unloading platform next to the building so that we can put a lot of box cars in there and get them unloaded. Again, I don't know what this facility does. Put in some high-lows and some boxes and stuff that have been unloaded, and we'll figure out exactly what that industry is as we go along. And the other big industry up at River Point is this River Point grain facility. You can see it makes a big circle around the whole thing. There's two tracks. Only one of them is used for loading. The way I visualize that being used is that the empties will come in on the right side. They'll get pulled over to the left side and be filled up. And as those cars are filled up, they'll put in 4 more empties and keep pushing them back until they've got a car load or a train load. Drag those full hoppers over to the main yard for lashing on to another train and taken off the route. Now again, Canadian National is the only railroad other than Tidewater that services this River Point yard. The other modification is where it goes off to the right there. That was just ending in the scenery. It didn't go anywhere. I actually have that connected to my staging yard. The track on the left there actually goes down to Tidewater. So thanks for watching. It's just a quick video tour of the Tidewater route. Hope you enjoyed it, and leave a like, subscribe if you'd like, and talk to you later.